Hikers or hunters? What did you see out there that made you not want to go back into the woods? I spend a lot of time in the backcountry in the wintertime. Usually it's just me and a friend. Most trails we do are popular in the summer and totally dead once it starts to snow. Winter in 2014, we've hiked about 2 miles in and see this small black backpack in the middle of the trail. We hadn't seen any other cars at the trailhead or any people around, but this backpack hadn't been there long because there wasn't any snow on it. It had snowed the night before. It was a very odd sight. We figured if it was still on the trail when we looped around, we'd pick it up. About 4 miles in, and my friend and I are chatting away when I notice a large figure flailing in some trees up ahead. We go quiet and can hear this man rambling while he's pacing. At this point, we're pretty freaked out and decide to turn around when we hear, "Oh, hi there," and this guy starts walking towards us. And then out pops another guy with a very pricey-looking video camera. It turned out this flailing guy was actually a rapper, and they were filming a music video for one of his new songs out in the forest. They had parked before the trailhead, so we didn't notice their car. They ended up being super friendly and gave us a card, and we figured out it was their backpack we had seen on the trail the few miles before. We said our goodbyes and walked out. But hot damn, I was sure we were about to be killed in the woods. Edit. Holy shit. Wow, so many people, so many things. I did not expect this. Also updated the year to 2014. I will try my hardest to find the rap video artist. But as I've explained in the comments, my mind was a little stuck on, wow, we're not being murdered right now, how nice. And it was 4 years ago. Edit 2. It was not the Migos video. But keep sending me other music videos that you think it might be, because I have no idea where to begin. We're gonna find this out together, guys. When I was younger, I used to horsepack around Northern California for weeks at a time. This was during the late 70s, early 80s. I rarely used a compass, but I always had a map of my area. I'm pretty good at dead reckoning via landmarks, and I've never been lost in my life. Except once. I was in the Six Rivers National Forest, heading south towards Trinity County. This is very rough terrain, lots of high ridges, steep hills, rocks everywhere, and nasty brush to tangle you. I was riding the ridges, heading generally south, and trying to find easy places to cross to the next ridge when it became convenient. The skies were partly cloudy, and it was cool around 60 degrees Fahrenheit, cold for that time of year since it was early August, and the temps were normally 90 degrees Fahrenheit during the day. I found a reasonable spot to cross over to the next ridge south of me and started down. When I got into the ravine, it turned out that what looked easy from above was actually a rocky nightmare. I started walking up the ravine to find an easier place to get out of there. A wind picked up and it started drizzling. I walked for a mile or so, couldn't find anything that I wanted to risk my neck on, and more importantly, my horse's hooves, and decided to start up the side I had come down originally. I got to the top, took a look around to orient myself, and froze in shock. The landscape was completely different. I don't mean that it was lower or easier or less rocky. I mean that all of my landmarks were gone. Some of them were peaks that were 30 to 40 miles away, others were a lot closer. It was completely different. I had no idea where I was, and I was completely disoriented. I dug out my map and started to review where I was, the angles on the hills I had been navigating by earlier, etc. I couldn't find anything that matched. The only thing that I could positively identify was the route up from the ravine that I had just come up. Since it was cloudy, I couldn't navigate by the sun. All I had were the landmarks that I used for dead reckoning, and those were gone. The wind was picking up, and it was getting very, very cold. I almost expected snow. I had no idea where I was, so I decided to backtrack to my last known position and see if I could pick up where I left off. I started down the hill, got to the bottom of the ravine, and started the opposite direction up the ravine. This time I was very careful, watching for signs of my passage before and the hill I came down in the first place. It stopped raining, the wind died down, and the day started to warm up. I found my original trail down the hill, started back up, and got to the top. All the landmarks were there now. I was totally confused. I kept going on the ridge, watching carefully to find where I had come up before. When I got to the spot where I thought it should be, there was no sign of it. I cast back and forth for a while, trying to find my trail with no success. All of my landmarks were there to see. Eventually, I gave up and continued on the ridge. A bit later, I found an easy trail down and an easy trail back up the other side and continued on my way. To this day, I have no idea what happened. Even though it was drizzling, I should have been able to see the closer landmarks, and honestly, the further landmarks were big enough to see. To that point, thinking back on it, there was no sign that it was drizzling when I continued on to where I had ascended the first time. And the temperature swings were wild that day, easily 30 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Not uncommon in the mountains, but really odd for that time of year in that place. Another thing, originally I had chosen to descend that at that point because there was nothing to prevent me from going up the other side. I could see easily from the ridgetop. But when I arrived, there were tons of boulders blocking me that I should have been able to see from top. Eerie and creepy. At the time, sure, but I was more focused on trying to orient myself. But thinking back on it, even more so now. My father and I were following a trail for a while, so we decided to take a break and catch our breaths. I sat on a log off the trail, and my dad stood on the edge of the trail waiting for me to get up. I hear some movement and scan around, and I see a man, dressed casually, walking quickly down the trail with a Glock in his hand. He is not really following the trail, he is just walking toward my dad with haste. Before he comes up to my dad, he asks if he's seen anything, pretty normal. I keep an eye on him because I don't believe he was there to hunt. I think he was there to make sure my dad hadn't seen anything he wasn't supposed to. He wasn't dressed like a hunter, he didn't walk like a hunter, and it was deer season and he decided he would take his Glock out to get a deer. I wasn't buying, so I put a round in the chamber and watched them talk. He seemed to be confident until my dad mentioned that he was here with me and gestured in my direction. I nodded and made a half-assed wave, and he seemed to lose interest in us and ended the conversation shortly after and turned around and walked back the way he came, just about as fast as he walked up to us. It worried us a bit, but we continued on. We haven't been back to that area in a while. My dad told me that there have been drug busts near that area in the past. This isn't a supernatural tale, just an experience that made me not want to go back to that area. I missed this trip with my dad and his hunting buddy. They were in a remote section of southeastern Wyoming hunting for elk. Like any good elk hunter, they were up at 3:30 to stake out their spot and watch the herd patterns before daylight. As they were driving up to the spot, a figure appeared in their headlights, and by their silhouette, it wasn't a hunter. What was a person doing walking down the road in complete darkness with no hunting gear? My dad was driving, so he slowed to a crawl in his truck, and his buddy prepared his sidearm, as this had foul play written all over it. When they could distinguish the figure in the headlights, they saw it was a girl in a tank top and underwear, wearing no shoes on. They stopped and verbally checked her status out the window, as there could have easily been somebody staked out in the sagebrush, ready to ambush. When it was clear she was severely hypothermic and bleeding from her feet, they got out and let her in the truck cab. From there, it had to have been a terrifying experience for that girl. I sure wouldn't want two middle-aged rednecks picking me up 40 miles from any town. They cranked up the heat full blast and drove her to a nearby country gas station, where they were regular customers and friends with the owner and his wife, who was a retired nurse. When the girl could finally articulate her words, she told them that she and her boyfriend drove out there to drink and have sex. When she started having a seizure during sex, he lost his temper, grabbed her shoes, and threw them into the sage. When she got out of the car to find them, he peeled off, leaving her in near-freezing temperatures in her skivvies. She estimated she walked about 4 miles on a dirt road before my dad found her. It's a good thing hunters start early because she easily could have died. Edit. Thanks for the awesome response. My dad is a real great guy, and a true Wyoming man. He seriously was more upset about getting to the elk spot late than anything else, haha. And to anybody doubting the veracity of the story or thinking I derived it from Wind River, we'll have to see it now, thanks for the recommendation. That is totally fair. My dad could have made it up, maybe to cover up his disappointment in not getting the elk. But I doubt he would do that. My old man is a shit magnet and has all of the weirdest stories about bad shit happening around him, and I've seen some of it. Totally par for the course. And for an extra dose of the Weird West, let me introduce you to Monk Kingbird Pottery Edit 2. One more thought before bed. It's fair that this doesn't respond directly to the prompt, but think of it this way. You drive to your elk hunting spot, but arrive an hour later than usual and still bag your animal at sunrise. No second thoughts. A week later, you see in the newspaper that the remains of a 20-something woman were found in the brush along the road you drove down. Her time of death was within an hour or two of your arrival at the spot. That is the real horror of the situation, and I'm happy my dad isn't living with that. One of my experiences happened on family-owned land in North Carolina, where I used to live. I still hunt, so it never kept me from going again. We called it the noise to this day. If you ask people who live or lived adjacent to the land about it, they know exactly what you are talking about. Whatever it is was very loud and very fast. It was like a very loud primal scream. First time I heard it, I was hunting with my dad and brother. We were stalk hunting and very slowly and methodically moving through the forest. I noticed everything had gotten oddly quiet. Only thing you heard was the water running over the rocks in the creek. My dad stopped us and said to hold still and not to move. As soon as we stopped, it screamed behind us. It was so loud it made my ears ring. My dad never showed fear and was always rational. He looked very nervous, and I'm ready to shit on myself. My brother has his gun shouldered, looking around, trying to spot it just to see what it is and make sure it isn't close. Then it screams again. Now it seems closer and in front of us. My dad puts his hand on my shoulder and just says, "Run for the car now." I jump up like a scared rabbit and run as fast as my legs will carry me. We are all running, and we can hear this thing screaming as we run like it's keeping pace easily. I can see the gravel road ahead and know the car is close. It lets out another scream that sounds like it's to my left now, and very close. I bolt right, and we all come sliding out onto the road about 100 yards above the car. That's when I hear this weird whistle from the woods, and then everything just goes back to normal. Birds chirping away, squirrels calling, crows cawing. We stopped to catch our breath and uneasily walked to the car, ready for anything. 100 yards never seemed so far away. That wasn't the last time I heard it. In fact, I have more stories that involve the noise. If anyone wants to hear about them, I will gladly share. My family tried to find it for years to figure it out. When we thought we were close, it would be somewhere else. Even trained hunting dogs ran away from this thing. Weird stuff, but I still love to hunt. The way I figure if something gets me while I'm hunting, at least I'm doing something I love, and being close to nature, I harvest her bounty and thank her for it. One day my body will feed her and the animals I hunted. In September this year, I was hunting antelope out near the Red Desert in Wyoming. I had just shot my antelope and was walking about 150 yards out to where he dropped so I could tag and begin field dressing the animal. I should mention I'm about 40 miles from the main road, and I had not seen another human or vehicle since I got off the main road. This area is so extremely remote, it's hard to even describe. So as I'm walking out to the antelope, I look up, and about 1 to 2 miles off in the distance, I see this extremely bright light zooming over the landscape and headed my way. I thought it was probably a game warden on a side-by-side coming to check my paperwork and all. No big deal. I keep walking out and find the animal and look up, and this light dives down into the sagebrush and I can no longer see it. It was about half a mile from me when it disappeared. I also notice I don't hear any engine, if it is in fact someone on a motorized vehicle. I'm mostly confused at this point, not sure what the hell this light is or where it went, but I continue on and tag the antelope. It takes me all of 10 to 15 seconds to put the tag on. Then I look up, and I see the light traveling away from me now. And it's about 3 to 5 miles away from me, and going at least 100 miles per hour. It was really zooming way faster than any vehicle could travel over that type of terrain. Also, there are no roads or anything where the light is traveling, so I don't know how it was going so fast. I'm pretty spooked at this point. I field dressed the animal as fast as I could and dragged it back to my truck. I just had a very uneasy feeling at this point. I have no idea what that light was, although some others have speculated it was a drone, but if it was a drone operated by the game warden, why didn't he come check me out once I got back to my truck? So, a few years ago, I went camping with my dad about a quarter mile off the trail. As we were cooking food, a baby bear wandered into the small clearing. We were a bit freaked out, but it was probably more scared of us, so it wandered away. Important later. We left a campsite to hike a bit, and when it started to get dark, we traveled back to our campsite. We realized we hadn't marked it in any way and spent a while looking for it. We heard some growling, like really loud, and we freaked. We started to walk on the trail back to the car with my dad holding our only flashlight. We hear a growl closer this time. Not super close, but close enough we started to run. By then, it was pitch black other than the flashlight. As I ran, I heard my dad drop the flashlight. He found it, but only one of the batteries was still in it. I was thinking this definitely felt like a basic horror plot. We ran pretty fast the few miles back to the car and drove home. We came back the next day and searched all day, couldn't find it. We came back the next weekend, still couldn't find it. The next weekend, my dad went by himself and found it. He brought the stuff home. The tent had claw marks through it, and all the food that we hadn't yet hung in a tree was eaten. Not super scary, but I haven't gone camping since.